Right now, as you watch this, your body is betraying your desires. Not metaphorically, biologically. There's a nerve sending 10 times more information from your organs to your brain than your brain sends back, and it's been programmed since childhood to vote no every time you reach for more. They knew this in 2010. Princeton researchers proved it, measured it, quantified it. Then the study vanished under 400 pages of bureaucratic noise. Why? Because a regulated nervous system can't be controlled, can't be sold to, can't be kept small. The nervus vagus is your biological voting system for reality, and someone rigged the election before you could speak. This video is the recount. This is how you take your power back from a mechanism you didn't know was running the show. There's a reason ancient texts called it the silver cord, a reason yogis spent lifetimes trying to master it, a reason mystics whispered about the pathway between heaven and earth. They weren't being poetic. They were describing a physical nerve that runs from your skull to your gut, touching every major organ, casting 10 votes to your brain's 1 vote on what reality you experience. The nervus vagus. Some called it the God nerve, not because it's divine, but because it has divine-level authority over your existence. It decides if you're worthy before your thoughts get a say. It chooses scarcity or abundance before your mind creates a vision board. And for most people, it was programmed in childhood to vote against them. But here's the secret they don't want you to know. It's reprogrammable, not through thought, through something else entirely. Let me show you exactly what's been happening inside every person who's ever tried to manifest and failed, every person who's visualized their dreams and watched them dissolve, every person who's affirmed their worth and still felt worthless. The problem was never their mind, the problem was never their beliefs. The problem was a nerve they didn't know existed, casting votes they couldn't hear, broadcasting a frequency they couldn't see. And until you understand this mechanism, until you see how reality actually works, you'll keep trying to paint over rust while the foundation crumbles beneath you. Think about a thermostat for a moment. Not the smart one on your wall, an old mechanical one. It has one job: measure the temperature in a room and tell the heating system what to do. If it reads cold, the heat turns on. If it reads hot, the cooling kicks in. Simple, automatic, constant. But here's what most people don't realize about thermostats. They don't measure the temperature of the whole house. They only measure the temperature at their specific location. Install that thermostat next to a drafty window in winter, and it'll think your entire house is freezing, even if every other room is perfectly warm. And it'll blast heat into all those warm rooms because its measurement point is giving it distorted data. Your vagus nerve is that thermostat. And for most of you watching this, it's been installed next to the coldest, most broken window in your entire being. It's measuring threat levels from a nervous system that learned, decades ago, that the world is dangerous, that people can't be trusted, that love is conditional, that resources are scarce, that being visible means punishment, that success leads to abandonment, that asking for what you need results in rejection. And based on that measurement, based on that reading from the frozen corner of your childhood, it's been telling your brain for years. It's cold in here, dangerously cold. Turn on maximum survival mode. Contract, defend, stay small, don't expand or we'll freeze to death. But here's the cruel irony. You're not in that cold room anymore. The window's been fixed. You're an adult now. The circumstances have changed. The people who made you feel unsafe are gone or irrelevant. The situations that taught you the world is threatening have passed. But your vagus nerve doesn't know that. It's still taking your body's temperature from that frozen moment in time, when you were 5 or 7 or 12. When you learned that the world votes no to people like you. And it's been broadcasting that message to your brain every single second since then, generating thoughts and emotions and perceptions that match a reality that no longer exists. And this is why positive thinking has never worked for you. This is why affirmations feel hollow. This is why you can visualize abundance all day long and still wake up feeling broke. Because you're trying to change the reading on the screen, while the thermostat is positioned in a freezing room, sending accurate data about the wrong location. You're trying to convince your brain that everything's fine, while your body, through your vagus nerve, is screaming that you're in mortal danger. Your thoughts don't control your vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve controls your thoughts. And until you relocate that thermostat, until you update the measurement point from childhood survival to present safety, nothing changes. The heat keeps blasting. The survival mode stays on, and you keep wondering why you're sweating and suffering in a house that should be comfortable. Now watch this carefully, because this is where everything you've been taught about manifestation reveals itself as backwards. In 2019, researchers did something that should have made international headlines, but mysteriously stayed buried in academic journals. They brought in two groups of people. Group 1, ultra-wealthy individuals, billionaires, people operating at the absolute peak of financial success. Group 2, average income earners, people working regular jobs, paying bills, getting by. They put both groups in brain scanners and exposed them to identical stresses, financial pressure, time constraints, difficult decisions under uncertainty, the exact same challenges. And here's what the scans revealed. When the average earners experienced stress, their vagus nerve deactivated. It shut down. Their nervous system moved away from regulation and toward panic. You could see it on the screen. Sympathetic activation spiking, heart rate variability dropping, the biological signature of fight or flight taking over. But when the wealthy people experienced the exact same stress, something opposite happened. Their vagus nerve activated. It turned on more strongly. They got calmer, more focused, more creative as the pressure increased. Their brains lit up in areas associated with strategic thinking and opportunity recognition, while the average earner's brains were lighting up in pure survival centers. Same stress, same circumstances, same objective challenge, opposite biological response. And the researchers tested for genetics. This wasn't inherited. This was learned. This was conditioning. The wealthy people had nervous systems that had been trained, either deliberately or accidentally, through privileged childhoods, to interpret pressure as opportunity instead of threat. Their vagus nerves had learned that challenge doesn't equal danger, that uncertainty doesn't require panic, that discomfort can coexist with safety. And because of that learned biological response, because their nervous systems stayed regulated under pressure, they had access to parts of their brain that dysregulated people can't reach. Creativity, strategic thinking, pattern recognition, the ability to see opportunities in chaos, to take calculated risks, to pivot when things don't work, to persist through failure without collapsing into shame. Not because they're more mentally tough, not because they believe in themselves more, because their vagus nerve, that God nerve, was voting yes, while everyone else's was voting no. Do you see what this means? The wealth gap isn't just about money or education or opportunity. It's biological. It's about vagal tone. It's about who has a nervous system calibrated for expansion and who has one locked in survival. Some people got lucky. They were born to regulated parents, grew up in safe environments, learned early that the world is abundant. Their thermostat was installed in a warm room. Others, maybe you, weren't so lucky. Dysregulated parents, chaotic environments, conditional love, unpredictable safety, and your thermostat got installed in a frozen corner, and it's been reading cold ever since. But here's where this shifts from despair to power. Those wealthy people in the study, they weren't born with superior vagus nerves. They learned regulation, which means you can too. The thermostat can be relocated. The God nerve can be reprogrammed. the voting system can be recalibrated. And when it is, when your nervous system finally learns to default to safety instead of threat, you don't just get wealthier. You become someone who experiences a fundamentally different reality. Same world, same circumstances, different biology, different life. Now let me take you somewhere most teachers never go because it's too strange, too mystical, too hard to explain without sounding unscientific. But the mystics understood this thousands of years before neuroscience caught up. They didn't call it the vagus nerve. They had other names: the silver cord, the sushumna nadi, the central channel, the pathway of kundalini. Every tradition, Hindu, Buddhist, Egyptian, Kabbalistic, Hermetic, described the same thing: a channel running from the base of the skull down through the body, connecting heaven and earth, spirit and matter, consciousness and form. And they knew, without MRI machines, without medical textbooks, without modern anatomy, that when this channel is open, when it's clear, when it's flowing, you become a conduit for something larger than yourself. Divine intelligence, source energy, the Tao, God. Whatever name you give it, they knew that this pathway determines whether consciousness can fully inhabit the body, or whether it stays trapped, constricted, unable to express its full nature. The yogis spent decades practicing pranayama, breath control with specific patterns, extended exhales, retention, rhythmic breathing. Modern science now knows these practices directly stimulate the vagus nerve, activating the parasympathetic nervous system. But the yogis didn't know the science. They discovered through experience that these practices opened the channel, that something shifted when they breathed this way. That reality became more fluid. That synchronicities increased. That the boundary between self and universe thinned. When they chanted Om, when they hummed mantras for hours, they weren't being religious. They were mechanically stimulating their vagus nerve through sustained vocal vibration. The nerve runs through the throat, wraps around the vocal cords. When you create sound there, when you hum deeply enough to feel vibration in your chest, you're massaging the God nerve from the inside. You're activating the pathway, opening the channel, not metaphorically, physiologically. And when they talked about Kundalini rising, that serpent energy moving up the spine, piercing each chakra, bringing enlightenment, they were describing what happens when the vagus nerve shifts from survival mode to full activation, from dorsal vagal shutdown or sympathetic overdrive into ventral vagal coherence. Modern polyvagal theory maps perfectly onto ancient Kundalini descriptions. The frozen base chakra is dorsal vagal collapse. The overactive solar plexus is sympathetic activation. The open heart and clear throat and illuminated crown, that's ventral vagal regulation, allowing energy to flow without obstruction. Same mechanism, different maps, different languages, but pointing at the same biological truth. There's a nerve in your body that determines whether you're connected to source or cut off from it, whether consciousness can flow through you or gets blocked, whether you're a clear channel or a clogged pipe. And that nerve, that pathway, that silver cord, that God nerve, is trainable, accessible, responsive to specific practices that speak its language. And here's the thing: modern science has now proven what the mystics always knew. In 2010, researchers at HeartMath Institute demonstrated that when someone's vagus nerve is regulated, their heart generates a coherent electromagnetic field that extends 15 feet beyond their body. Coherent meaning ordered, smooth, like a perfect sine wave. And that field doesn't just affect the person generating it, it affects everyone nearby. Other people's nervous systems detect it and begin to synchronize. Their heart rate variability increases. Their stress hormones decrease. They feel calmer without knowing why. The ancients called this presence, charisma, spiritual authority, the ability to walk into a room and shift the energy without speaking. But it's not mystical, it's electromagnetic. It's what happens when one person's regulated vagus nerve broadcasts a field so coherent that other nervous systems want to match it. This is why enlightened masters could transform people just by being in the room, why some teachers make you feel safe before they teach anything, why certain people seem magnetic while others seem draining. It's not personality, it's biology. It's vagal tone broadcasting through an electromagnetic field that other bodies receive and respond to. You're doing this right now. Every person watching this is generating a field based on their nervous system state. If your vagus nerve is regulated, people around you are getting calmer. If it's dysregulated, people around you are getting more anxious. You're not just experiencing reality, you're creating the atmosphere others experience. You're not just manifesting your own life, you're influencing the field that everyone in your proximity is manifesting from. And this is where personal transformation becomes collective healing. Because when you regulate your vagus nerve, when you shift your electromagnetic broadcast from chaos to coherence, you're not just changing your own reality, you're changing the reality available to everyone you encounter. Your kids, your partner, your co-workers, strangers in the grocery store. Everyone within 15 feet of your heart is being affected by your vagal tone. And if you're a parent, if you're around children, this is even more critical, because children's nervous systems are forming through co-regulation with adults. They're learning what's normal by syncing with your frequency. If you're dysregulated, if your vagus nerve is stuck in survival, you're teaching the next generation that survival is normal, that anxiety is baseline, that the world requires constant vigilance, and they'll carry that into adulthood, pass it to their children, perpetuate the cycle. But if you regulate, if you do the work to shift your own nervous system from threat to safety, you break the chain, you become the pattern interrupt, the lineage healer, the one who stops the transmission of trauma and starts the transmission of coherence. This is sacred work, not in some abstract spiritual sense, in a literal biological sense. You're rewiring the nervous system that connects you to everyone you love. You're updating the electromagnetic field that shapes the atmosphere they develop in. You're relocating the thermostat for the entire house, not just your room. Now let me show you the exact mechanism that's been running your life without your knowledge, the childhood imprint, the original programming, because your vagus nerve didn't come into this world dysregulated. You were born with it defaulting to safety, to openness, to trust. But then life happened. Experiences occurred, and your nervous system, doing exactly what it's designed to do, learned to adapt. Imagine a baby crying. That's the primary communication tool. I need something, I'm uncomfortable, I'm scared, help me. And in an ideal world, a caregiver responds immediately, picks up the baby, soothes them, meets the need, and the baby's vagus nerve learns a program. When I signal distress, help comes. The world is responsive. I'm safe. My needs matter. Expression leads to relief. But that's not what happened for most people watching this. Maybe the caregiver was overwhelmed. Maybe they believed in crying it out. Maybe they were dysregulated themselves, too activated or shut down to attune. So the baby cried, and nobody came. The baby cried louder. Still nothing. The baby screamed, thrashed, activated every survival response available. And eventually, exhausted, depleted, the baby stopped. Not because the need was met, because the nervous system collapsed, gave up, went into shutdown, decided that expressing need doesn't work, so there's no point trying. And in that moment, that baby's vagus nerve learned a program that's still running decades later. Needs are dangerous. Expressing yourself leads to abandonment. Stay quiet, stay small. Don't ask for too much or you'll be alone. That's not a belief that person chose. That's a biological program encoded before language, before memory, before conscious thought. And it's still running. right now. Every time they want to ask for something and don't. Every time they have a need and suppress it. Every time they make themselves small to avoid being too much. That's not personality. That's the God nerve-running childhood survival code in an adult body. Or imagine a toddler learning to explore. Curious, adventurous, touching everything, trying everything, discovering the world. And every time they reach for something, every time they wander too far, every time they experiment, they get yelled at. No! Don't touch that. Stop! Get back here. Constant correction. Constant control. Constant punishment for the natural impulse to explore. And that toddler's vagus nerve learns. Exploration is dangerous. Curiosity leads to punishment. The safe strategy is to stay still. Stay within boundaries. Don't venture into the unknown or bad things happen. And now that toddler is an adult who can't take risks, can't try new things, can't expand beyond what feels familiar. And they think it's fear. They think it's lack of confidence. But it's not. It's a vagal program installed decades ago that says expansion equals danger. The body is doing exactly what it was trained to do. Keep them inside the boundaries where caregivers wouldn't rage at them. Except the caregivers aren't there anymore. The boundaries aren't real anymore. But the God nerve doesn't know that. It's still protecting them from threats that no longer exist. Or imagine a child who was only loved conditionally, praised for achieving, rewarded for performing, celebrated for grades and trophies and being good. But when they just wanted to be held, when they just needed connection without doing anything to earn it, the caregivers were distant, busy, unavailable. The message was clear: love must be earned. Worth is conditional. Rest equals rejection. And that child's vagus nerve learned, I'm only safe when I'm producing. If I stop achieving, I'll lose connection. Rest is dangerous because it leads to abandonment. And now that child is an adult who can't stop working. Can't relax without guilt. Can't receive without immediately trying to give back. And they call it ambition. They call it drive. They frame it as a positive quality. But underneath, the nervous system is terrified. Because every time they rest, every time they stop performing, the God nerve fires the alarm. You're going to be abandoned. You're going to lose love. Get back to work. Produce. Achieve. Earn your existence. And you can't manifest abundance from that state. Because abundance requires receiving. Receiving requires rest. And rest feels like death to a nervous system that learned rest equals abandonment. Or imagine a teenager falling in love for the first time, opening their heart completely, showing their real self, being vulnerable. And the other person mocked them, rejected them, left them. And the pain was so intense, so overwhelming, that the vagus nerve made an executive decision. Never again. Never open like that again. Vulnerability equals destruction. Love equals pain. The safe strategy is to build walls, stay defended. Don't let anyone close enough to hurt you. And now that teenager is an adult who can't form intimate relationships, who picks emotionally unavailable people because available people feel dangerous, who sabotages connection whenever it gets too real, who creates the distance that confirms their childhood belief that love isn't safe, and they think they're choosing wrong. They think they have bad luck. They think something's wrong with them, but they're not choosing wrong. The God nerve is choosing correctly based on its programming. It learned that intimate connection equals pain. So it's protecting them by only allowing connections that stay at safe distance. The unavailable people feel safe because they confirm the program. The available people feel dangerous because they threaten to prove the program wrong. And the vagus nerve would rather be right than happy. It would rather maintain the familiar pattern than risk the unknown. even if the unknown is actually better. Do you see it now? Every limitation you're experiencing, every pattern you can't break, every self-sabotage you can't stop. It's not a character flaw. It's not a spiritual failing. It's not evidence that you're broken. It's a vagal program, installed by experiences you didn't choose, run by a nervous system trying to keep you safe using outdated data. And that program is reprogrammable. Not through understanding it intellectually, not through forgiving the people who installed it, not through talking about it in therapy for 10 years, through giving your body new experiences that update the vote. Because here's what trauma therapy gets wrong. Here's why talk therapy fails for nervous system issues. Trauma doesn't live in your memories. It doesn't live in your thoughts. It doesn't live in your stories about what happened. Trauma lives in your vagus nerve. As a pattern, as a biological state, as a default setting that keeps running even when the original threat is long gone. You can understand your trauma intellectually. You can have every insight. You can forgive everyone involved. You can reframe the narrative. And your vagus nerve is still locked in the same defensive pattern it learned when you were 7, still broadcasting the same frequency, still voting no to the same opportunities, because understanding happens in your prefrontal cortex. Change happens in your nervous system. And your nervous system doesn't listen to insight. It listens to experience, to sensation, to input that comes through the body, not the mind. This is why people can be completely self-aware and still not change their behavior. Why you can know something is true and still not embody it. Why insight feels profound in the moment, but doesn't translate to lasting transformation. Because knowing happens in your thinking brain, embodiment happens in your nervous system. And the God nerve doesn't care about what you know. It cares about whether you're safe right now, in this moment, in your body. So healing isn't about understanding your past. Healing is about updating your present. It's about giving your vagus nerve new data, new experiences of safety, new felt senses of expansion without punishment, of needs being met, of vulnerability not leading to destruction, of rest not leading to abandonment. And when that happens, when your nervous system finally accumulates enough new data to override the old program, everything shifts. Not because you've become a different person, because you've become a regulated person. And regulation changes what reality you have access to. Now let me show you something most people never discover. The 48-hour window, the biological timeline of how nervous system change actually works. Because most people quit too early. They try regulating their vagus nerve for a few days, don't see dramatic shifts, and conclude it doesn't work. But your nervous system has a specific transformation cycle, a testing period, an integration phase. And if you understand what's happening in that 48-hour window, you won't quit when it gets hard. Hour 1. You do your first vagal regulation practice, morning humming, extended exhale breathing, cold water on your face, whatever the intervention is, and your nervous system immediately registers the input. Your vagus nerve activates. Your heart rate variability increases. You feel a shift, a softening, a moment of relief, a tiny window of calm. And your conscious mind thinks, great, we're fixing this. This is working. But your body thinks something completely different. Your body thinks, this is new. New is different. Different is dangerous. This could be a trap. Abort, abort, abort. Hour 2 to 12. The backlash hits. Your old nervous system pattern fights the new input. You feel more anxious than before you started, more agitated, more uncomfortable. Your symptoms intensify. That tightness in your chest gets worse. That churning in your stomach amplifies. That brain fog thickens. And your mind says, see? I knew this wouldn't work. It's making things worse. Go back to the old way. At least the old way was familiar. But this isn't the practice failing. This is your nervous system testing whether the new pattern is real, whether it's safe to shift, or whether this is a trick and you need to snap back to baseline. Because baseline, even if it's dysregulated, even if it's painful, is familiar. And to a nervous system that learned unpredictability equals threat, familiar equals safe, even if familiar is suffering. Most people quit here, right here, at hour 10, when the resistance is strongest, when it feels like everything's getting worse. They interpret the increased discomfort as evidence the practice doesn't work. But they're wrong. This is withdrawal. Your nervous system is addicted to its baseline state. And when you try to shift that baseline, it fights back. It cranks up the alarm, it amplifies the symptoms. It tries everything it can to force you back to the known state. But if you keep practicing, if you don't quit, if you stay with the new input even when your body is screaming at you to stop, something shifts. Hour 12 to 24. The resistance starts to soften. Your nervous system realizes the new input isn't going away, that you're serious about this, that maybe, possibly, this new pattern is here to stay. And it starts testing whether the new pattern is safe. It sends up little test balloons, moments where you feel genuinely calm, moments where your chest opens, moments where you think, oh, maybe I actually can feel safe. And then immediately, like clockwork, your old pattern kicks back in. No, we can't. Remember what happened last time we felt safe? We got hurt. Stay defended. This is a trick. But the moments of calm get longer. The windows of regulation get wider. Your nervous system is learning, not intellectually, experientially. It's gathering data that maybe, possibly, this new state won't get you killed, that maybe safety is available, that maybe you're allowed to let the guard down without being destroyed. Hour 24 to 48. This is the critical window. This is where your nervous system makes the decision whether to integrate the new baseline or reject it and snap back to the old one. If you keep practicing through this window, if you keep sending your vagus nerve consistent signals that say, it's safe to regulate, it's safe to open, it's safe to shift, something profound happens at the end of hour 48. Your nervous system updates its default. Not completely, not permanently yet, but enough. Enough that the new state starts feeling more familiar than the old state. Enough that regulation starts feeling safer than dysregulation. Enough that your body stops fighting the shift and starts supporting it. You've crossed the first checkpoint, the first 48-hour window, and now practices that felt forced start feeling natural. Regulation that took effort starts happening more automatically. Your vagus nerve stops resisting the new pattern and starts reinforcing it. But here's what nobody tells you. You're going to have to cross multiple 48-hour windows, because your nervous system doesn't just have one baseline. It has different baselines for different contexts. Baseline when you're alone. Baseline when you're with people. Baseline when you're working. Baseline when you're resting. Baseline when you're being challenged. Baseline when you're being intimate. Each context has its own program, its own testing period, its own integration window. So you might regulate beautifully when you're alone, morning practices going smoothly, evening rituals feeling good. But the moment you're in a social situation, your nervous system snaps back to old patterns. That's not failure. That's your social baseline still operating from childhood programming. You need to cross another 48-hour window specifically for social contexts. Practice regulation while with people. Give your nervous system evidence that connection can be safe, that being seen doesn't lead to punishment, that vulnerability doesn't equal destruction. Or you might regulate well during the day but collapse at night. That's your nighttime baseline still running old code. Another 48-hour window needed for sleep. Practice regulation before bed. Give your nervous system evidence that rest is safe, that letting your guard down doesn't mean something bad will happen while you're vulnerable. That morning will come even if you don't stay hypervigilant all night. This is why transformation takes 90 days. Not because change is slow, but because you need to cross multiple 48-hour windows in multiple contexts until your nervous system generalizes, until it learns, oh, safety isn't just available in this one specific situation when I'm doing my morning practice alone in my room. Safety is available everywhere, in every context, with every person. I can be regulated as my new default, not just in controlled environments. And at the 90-day mark, if you've been consistent, if you've practiced daily, if you've crossed enough windows in enough contexts, your nervous system completes the full update. Regulation becomes your new baseline. Not something you have to work for, not something you have to maintain through constant effort. Just your default state, the way your vagus nerve naturally operates when no actual threat is present. And when that happens, you don't have to try to manifest anymore. You don't have to work on your mindset. You don't have to visualize or affirm or raise your vibration, because your electromagnetic field is now broadcasting coherence automatically. Your nervous system is collapsing quantum probabilities that match safety automatically. Reality is responding to your new frequency without you having to consciously direct it. You're not trying to create a different reality. You've become a different person, and that person experiences a different reality, not because they're manifesting it, but because they're matching it. Now, let me show you what the elite actually know about this mechanism. What they're doing, often without realizing why it works, that keeps them regulated while everyone else stays stuck in survival. Go look at any billionaire's morning routine, any CEO's daily schedule, any high performer's rituals. You'll see the same pattern repeated over and over. They wake up early before the chaos starts. They do some form of movement, yoga, exercise, walking, stretching. They do breath work, sometimes calling it meditation, sometimes calling it breathing exercises, sometimes not naming it at all. They avoid their phone for the first 30 to 90 minutes. They eat specific foods at specific times. They have non-negotiable practices that everyone around them has learned not to interrupt. And the world looks at this and calls it discipline, calls it productivity hacks, calls it the habits of successful people. But that's not what's happening. They're regulating their vagus nerve. They're setting their nervous system baseline before the world has a chance to dysregulate them. They're choosing which room they start the day in, instead of letting circumstances choose for them. The early wake-up? That's not about getting more done. That's about having time in a quiet, controlled environment where their nervous system can regulate before chaos enters. The movement? That's completing the stress cycle. That's metabolizing stress hormones left over from sleep. That's discharging any activation that built up overnight. The breath work? That's direct vagal stimulation. Extended exhales activating the parasympathetic nervous system. Humming or chanting mechanically stimulating the God nerve through vocal vibrations. The phone avoidance? That's not letting other people's emergencies hijack their nervous system before they've set their own baseline. Because every notification, every email, every text is a potential stressor, a potential activator, and if they check their phone first thing, they're letting the world vote on their nervous system state before they've had a chance to vote themselves. The specific foods? They're eating things that don't spike blood sugar and activate sympathetic response. Things that support stable energy instead of the crash and spike cycle that keeps most people dysregulated all day. They're doing vagal regulation. They just don't call it that, they call it their morning routine, their success habits, their non-negotiables. But it's all the same mechanism, protecting their nervous system, baseline, so they can operate from the daylight room instead of the red room or dark room. And this regulated baseline is what gives them the capacity to handle billion-dollar decisions without collapsing, to see opportunities that stressed people miss because their perception is contracted, to take risks that dysregulated nervous systems interpret as life-threatening, to fail multiple times without spiraling into shame because their vagus nerve doesn't interpret failure as identity-level annihilation. Not because they're more mentally tough because they're more biologically regulated. And here's the part they'll never admit publicly. They buy access to other regulated nervous systems. That's what expensive environments are actually selling. When someone pays $10,000 for a mastermind, or $50,000 for a high-end retreat, or $500,000 for membership to an exclusive club, what are they actually buying? Not information. You can get that free on the internet. Not connections. You can network anywhere. They're buying access to people whose nervous systems are regulated. They're buying co-regulation, because nervous systems sync. It's called entrainment. When you're in a room with someone whose vagus nerve is dysregulated, whose baseline is sympathetic activation or dorsal shutdown, your nervous system picks up that frequency and starts to match it. You walk in feeling fine. 20 minutes later, you're anxious. You didn't catch their anxiety through conversation. Your electromagnetic field detected their chaos, and your nervous system entrained to it. But when you're in a room with someone whose vagus nerve is deeply regulated, whose baseline is solid ventral vagal, whose electromagnetic field is broadcasting coherence, your nervous system picks up that frequency too, and it starts to match. You walk in feeling stressed. 20 minutes later, you're calm. You didn't talk about your stress. Your nervous system co-regulated with theirs. Their coherence pulled yours into alignment. This is what wealthy people are buying when they pay for exclusive access. Regulated nervous systems to entrain with, coherent electromagnetic fields to sync to, environments where everyone's baseline is safety instead of threat. Because they understand, intuitively if not explicitly, that the nervous systems you're around most frequently become your baseline. You don't just think like the 5 people you spend the most time with. You regulate like them. Your vagal tone becomes the average of your environment. And this is why private schools produce different outcomes than public schools, even when you control for money. It's not about better teachers or better curriculum or better facilities. It's about regulated environments. Private schools have smaller class sizes, less chaos, less overwhelm, more individual attention, more attunement, more co-regulation, better resources, less scarcity stress, teachers who are less burnt out, more regulated adults for kids to entrain with. When a child develops in that environment, when their nervous system is forming in an atmosphere of relative safety and adults who aren't constantly activated, they build different neural pathways, different vagal tone, different capacity for regulation under pressure. Their thermostat gets installed in a warm room, and they carry that baseline into adulthood. Public schools? Overwhelmed teachers carrying 50 students instead of 15. Overcrowded classrooms creating constant sympathetic activation. Limited resources creating scarcity stress. Standardized testing creating performance pressure. Everyone's nervous system is in survival mode. The teachers are dysregulated from impossible demands. The kids are dysregulated from chaotic environments. And when a child develops in that atmosphere, when their nervous system is forming in constant activation, they learn that chaos is normal, that hypervigilance is baseline, that you can't ever truly relax because threat is always imminent. They build resilience to chaos, but they also build a nervous system that defaults to dysregulation. And unless they deliberately retrain that baseline as adults, they're operating at a biological disadvantage compared to someone whose vagus nerve learned safety from birth. This is privilege nobody talks about. Not economic privilege, though that enables it. Biological privilege, nervous system privilege. Some people got to develop in regulated environments. Their vagus nerves defaulted to safety. Their thermostats got installed in warm rooms. And now they're adults who can take bigger risks, think more creatively, handle more pressure, build more wealth. Not because they're smarter or harder working, but because their biology supports it. While others are trying to think their way into success with a nervous system fighting them every step. But here's the good news. Here's why understanding this doesn't have to feel like another reason you're behind. You can install that privilege now. You can create the regulated environment you didn't get as a child. You can retrain your vagus nerve to default to safety. You can relocate the thermostat from the frozen corner to the warm center. You can't change your past, but you can change your baseline. And when you do, you're not just healing yourself, you're healing your lineage. Because trauma doesn't just affect you, it moves through generations, not through your thoughts, not through your stories, through your nervous system. When your mother was pregnant with you, her nervous system state was shaping yours, her cortisol levels while carrying you, her heart rate variability while you developed in her womb, her vagal tone. All of that was downloading into your forming nervous system before you took your first breath. If she was stressed, scared, in survival mode, you absorbed that. Your nervous system started forming around the message. The world is dangerous. Stay alert, be ready to fight or flee. If she was regulated, safe, in ventral vagal, you absorbed that too. Your nervous system formed around, the world is safe, you are welcome, you can relax. And it goes back further. Your mother's nervous system was shaped by her mother's nervous system, and her mother's by her grandmother's. Trauma moving through bloodlines, not because of curses, but because dysregulation gets inherited. Each generation passing down their survival patterns, their defensive strategies, their constricted vagal tone, their thermostat settings installed in frozen rooms. But it can stop with you. When you regulate your vagus nerve, when you shift your baseline, when you relocate your thermostat from cold to warm, you're not just changing yourself. You're changing what gets transmitted forward. If you have children, if you're around children, your regulated nervous system becomes their baseline. They co-regulate with you. They learn that safety is possible, that regulation is normal, that the world can be warm instead of cold. You're healing backwards, updating the programming you inherited from generations of survival. And you're healing forwards, installing new programming in the next generation, breaking the chain, stopping the transmission of trauma, starting the transmission of coherence. This is sacred work. This is why mystics treated nervous system practices as spiritual initiations. Why mystery schools guarded these techniques. Why yogis spent lifetimes mastering the pathway. Not because it's special, because it's fundamental. Because regulating your vagus nerve isn't just self-improvement, it's lineage healing. It's stopping generational curses at the biological level where they actually operate. Now let me give you the practices, the actual biological interventions that speak directly to the God nerve. Not mental exercises, not techniques you do with your thoughts, but direct inputs to the mechanism that creates your reality. And if you do these consistently for 90 days, crossing multiple 48-hour windows in multiple contexts, your nervous system will transform, your baseline will shift, your thermostat will relocate, and your reality will reorganize itself around your new broadcast frequency. First practice, the morning vagal anchor. 3 minutes. Before your phone, before your thoughts, before the world makes demands, before anything else enters your nervous system, you lie flat or sit comfortably, one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly, and you breathe. Not complicated breathing, just this pattern. Inhale through your nose for 4 counts. Hold the breath gently for 4 counts. Exhale through your mouth for 8 counts. And on that exhale, this is critical, you hum, low, deep, sustained, until you feel vibration in your chest. Why this works? The extended exhale, breathing out for twice as long as you breathe in, directly activates your parasympathetic nervous system. It's the biological off switch for fight or flight, not a metaphor, not a calming technique, a mechanical intervention. When you extend the exhale, your vagus nerve registers. We have time to empty our lungs completely. We're not being chased. There's no immediate threat. It's safe to activate the rest and digest response. The humming stimulates your vagus nerve through your vocal cords. The nerve runs right through your throat, wraps around your larynx. When you create sustained vibration there, when you hum deeply enough to feel it resonating in your chest, you're massaging the God nerve from the inside. This is why monks chant for hours, why mantras exist, why sacred sounds appear in every tradition. Not because sound is mystical, because vibration is mechanical. Because humming directly stimulates the nerve that controls your nervous system state. The hand placement creates interoceptive awareness. You're teaching your brain to pay attention to internal sensations instead of only scanning external threats. You're creating a feedback loop where your consciousness notices what's happening in your body. This is the beginning of coming home, of inhabiting the vehicle instead of just being a passenger disconnected from the controls. Do this every morning for 90 days, before anything else. Make it non-negotiable. This sets your baseline. This is you voting for which room you start the day in. This is you telling your nervous system, we're beginning in the daylight room today, not the red room or dark room. Over weeks and months of consistent input, this becomes your new default. Your nervous system learns to wake up regulated instead of immediately jumping to survival mode. Second practice, cold exposure reset. 30 seconds. At the end of every shower. After you've washed, after you're done with warm water, you turn the dial to cold, and you put your face and neck under the cold stream for 30 seconds. Not your whole body, unless you want to. Just face and neck, where your vagus nerve runs most superficially, where it's most accessible to external input. Why this works. Cold water on your face activates the mammalian dive reflex. It's a parasympathetic response that immediately stimulates your vagus nerve and lowers your heart rate. Your body thinks you're diving into water. It shifts into conservation mode, slowing metabolism, redirecting blood flow to vital organs, activating the exact opposite of fight or flight. More importantly, this trains resilience. It teaches your nervous system that discomfort doesn't equal danger, that you can experience challenge and stay regulated, that stress and safety can coexist in the same moment. When you voluntarily choose discomfort, when you're the one turning the water cold, not some external threat forcing it on you, your nervous system learns, oh, we can handle difficult things without collapsing into survival. Discomfort doesn't automatically mean threat. We have more capacity than we thought. Start with 10 seconds if 30 feels overwhelming. Build gradually. Transformation isn't in the intensity, it's in the consistency. Showing up every day and giving your vagus nerve the same message. We can do hard things. We can experience challenge without shutting down. This is how you build vagal tone, not through one dramatic intervention, but through repeated micro-challenges, proving your nervous system you're more capable than it believes. Third practice, the emergency exhale. 90 seconds. Whenever you notice you're in the red room, stressed, anxious, activated, chest tight, thoughts racing. This is your in-the-moment intervention. Your biological remote control for changing channels. Stop whatever you're doing. Close your eyes if you can, and breathe. Inhale through your nose for 4 counts. Exhale through your mouth for 8 counts. That's it. No holding. Just in for 4, out for 8. Do it 5 times. Why this works? Each extended exhale is a vote for ventral vagal. Each one is a direct signal to your vagus nerve. Turn off the alarm. We're not actually in danger. This is discomfort, not disaster. 5 rounds takes 90 seconds. And in 90 seconds you can shift from sympathetic activation to parasympathetic regulation. from the red room to the daylight room, not by thinking different thoughts, not by forcing yourself to calm down, by changing your biology through breath. Make this your automatic response to stress. The moment you notice activation, the moment your shoulders creep up, your jaw clenches, your chest tightens, stop and breathe. 5 rounds. That's your new pattern. Not reacting, not collapsing, not dissociating, just breathing. Every time you do this, you interrupt the old survival response with a new regulation practice. You're rewriting the program, teaching your nervous system there's another option besides panic. 4th practice, social co-regulation, once a week minimum. A real conversation with someone where you're fully present. No phones on the table, no distractions running, no performance, no agenda beyond connection. Just 2 human beings, 2 nervous systems, in the same space, both attempting regulation. Look them in the eyes, ask how they're really doing, not fine, really. Listen, not to respond, not to fix, not to compare, just witness. Be present with their experience without needing to change it. Then let them witness you. Share something real, something vulnerable, something true that you don't usually say. Notice what happens in your body. The fear of being seen, the relief when they don't reject you, the warmth when actual connection happens. Why this works? Your vagus nerve evolved for connection, for social engagement, for safe bonding. Isolation doesn't just feel bad, it physically dysregulates your nervous system at the biological level. You need other regulated nervous systems to sync with. You need co-regulation. Some parts of your vagus nerve only activate in safe social contexts. Some parts of your nervous system only heal in the presence of another attuned human being. This is why community heals. Why support groups work when medication doesn't. Why therapy helps most when the therapist is regulated themselves. Not because of the words exchanged, because of the nervous system's syncing. Your vagus nerve learning through co-regulation that connection can be safe, that being seen doesn't lead to punishment, that vulnerability can exist without destruction, that you're allowed to have needs and express them and still be loved. If you're isolated, if you're trying to heal alone, this practice becomes critical. Find one person, one safe relationship, one place where your nervous system can practice regulation in connection. Because you can do all the solo practices perfectly and still struggle without this. Some wounds only heal in relationship, some parts of the God nerve only open in co-regulation. 5th practice, the gratitude body scan, every night before sleep. 5 minutes. But not gratitude the way you've been taught, not listing things mentally, not thinking about what you're thankful for. This is somatic gratitude, embodied gratitude. Gratitude that lives in your tissue instead of your thoughts. You lie in bed, you close your eyes, and you scan your body looking for 3 sensations you're grateful for. Not things, not concepts, sensations. The softness of your pillow against your head, the fullness of your breath filling your chest, the warmth of your blanket, the absence of pain in your back, the feeling of your heartbeat, steady, reliable, keeping you alive without you having to think about it. You find these sensations, and you breathe into them. You let yourself feel grateful, not as a thought, but as a felt experience in your body. This might sound simple, too simple to matter, but it's one of the most powerful vagal regulation practices that exists. Why this works? Gratitude practiced in the body, not just the mind, directly increases vagal tone. But most people practice gratitude cerebrally. They think grateful thoughts. They mentally list blessings. And it doesn't land. It doesn't change their nervous system state because it's not dropping below the level of thought into the level of sensation. You need to feel it in your cells, in your organs, in the places where your vagus nerve is actually located. when you anchor gratitude in your body, when you let yourself feel thankful for the physical experience of being alive right now, you're training your nervous system to default to abundance instead of scanning for threat. To notice what's working instead of what's broken. To measure temperature from the warm rooms instead of the cold corner. And that shift, practiced every night for 90 days, recalibrates your baseline. Your thermostat slowly relocates from threat to safety. 6th practice, the heart rate variability tracker. This is different from the others because it's not something you do, it's something you measure. Get a wearable device that tracks HRV. Oura Ring if you can afford it. Whoop, Apple Watch. Something that gives you objective data about your nervous system state. And for 90 days, just observe. Don't judge. Don't try to fix anything. Just collect data. Look at your HRV every morning. Notice patterns. When is it high? When is it low? What activities raise it? What people? What foods? What thoughts? What environments lower it? What time of day? What contexts? Why this works? This practice is like turning on the lights in a room you've been navigating blind your whole life. Suddenly you can see what's actually there. You can see that your HRV crashes every time you scroll social media, that it rises when you take a walk in nature, that it plummets after talking to that one person who drains you, that it soars after your morning humming practice. You're not guessing anymore about what regulates you and what dysregulates you. You have objective data, and data removes the mystery. It shows you exactly what your unique nervous system responds to, because not everyone regulates the same way. Some people's HRV increases with gentle yoga. Others need intense exercise. Some need silence. Others need music. Some need solitude. Others need connection. There's no one-size-fits-all. But your HRV data shows you your pattern, your specific biological fingerprint, what your God nerve responds to. And once you see which inputs raise your vagal tone and which inputs crash it, you can make conscious choices. You can say no to things that dysregulate you, even if they seem like good things. You can say yes to things that regulate you, even if they seem selfish, because you have objective proof now. You're not operating on assumptions or shoulds. You're operating on data about your actual biology. These 6 practices, done consistently for 90 days, will shift your vagal tone more than 10 years of therapy, focused only on thoughts. Because they're working at the biological level where change actually happens. They're speaking directly to the mechanism that creates your reality, not the mental story, not the emotional pattern, the actual nervous system state that generates everything downstream. But here's what you need to understand. These practices aren't things you do to get results. They're things you do to regulate. Period. Not to manifest money, not to attract relationships, not to heal your body. Just to feel safe. Just to access the daylight room. Just because your nervous system deserves to exist somewhere other than constant threat mode. When you make that shift, when regulation becomes the goal instead of a tool for getting other things, something paradoxical happens. You stop chasing. You stop contracting around what you want. You stop broadcasting lack. And reality, no longer being resisted by your survival energy, flows toward you. Not because you manifested it with your mind, but because you finally became capable of receiving what was always trying to reach you. Your electromagnetic field is now broadcasting coherence instead of chaos. Your nervous system is collapsing quantum possibilities that match safety instead of threat. Your vagal tone is voting yes instead of no. And reality, being the perfect mirror that it is, reflects back circumstances that match your new frequency. This is how manifestation actually works. Not through thoughts or beliefs or visualizations, through biology, through nervous system state, through vagal tone, through the God nerve finally being allowed to vote for expansion instead of survival. And that vote changes everything. Not someday, not after you've fixed everything else, right now, with your next breath, with your next practice, with your next conscious choice to regulate instead of react. So here's what you do next. Right now, before this video ends, before you scroll away, before your mind files this as interesting information you'll apply later, you're going to do the morning vagal anchor. Right now, even though it's not morning, even though you're not in bed. Right now, one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly, close your eyes, breathe in through your nose for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 8 counts, and on that exhale, hum. Feel the vibration in your chest. Do it 5 times, right now, not later, now. Because this is the difference between people who transform and people who consume information. People who consume keep watching. People who transform practice immediately. Do it now. I'll wait. Did you do it? If you did, you felt something shift. Even if subtle, even if small. Something changed. Your shoulders dropped slightly, your jaw relaxed, your chest opened. Your mind got quieter. That's your nervous system responding to direct input. That's the God nerve activating. That's you choosing the daylight room. And you did it in 90 seconds with nothing but your body and your breath. No external circumstances had to change. No one had to give you permission. You just chose to regulate, and your nervous system said yes. Now imagine doing that every single morning for 90 days. Imagine crossing multiple 48-hour windows in multiple contexts. Imagine your baseline shifting from threat to safety, from the red room to the daylight room, from survival to creation, from childhood programming to present possibility. That's not fantasy. That's the predictable biological outcome of consistent input. That's what happens when you stop trying to think your way into a different reality and start regulating your way there. But you have to commit. 90 days, 3 months, the 6 practices daily, morning vagal anchor, cold exposure, emergency exhales when stressed, weekly social connection, nightly body scan, daily HRV tracking. Write it down. Tell someone. Make it real. Make it non-negotiable. Because your nervous system is waiting. Your God nerve is ready. Your electromagnetic field is standing by to shift frequency. Your lineage is ready to heal. And your reality is ready to reorganize itself around your new baseline. You're not broken. You've never been broken. You were just broadcasting from the wrong frequency, operating from outdated programming, taking your body's temperature from the coldest room while warm rooms existed all around you. And now you know. Now you see the mechanism. Now you have the practices. Now you have the map. And the door was never locked. It's been open this entire time. You just didn't know you were allowed to walk through. So here's your mantra. Not something you repeat mentally. Something you breathe into your cells every time you practice. Something you whisper to your vagus nerve every time you regulate. I am not broken. I am not stuck. I am not at the mercy of reality. I am the broadcast. I am the frequency. I am the channel between heaven and earth. And the channel is opening. One breath, one hum, one practice at a time. And here's the paradox that invites reflection as you leave this video. Sometimes the smallest switch controls the largest reality. You've been trying to move mountains with your mind, trying to manifest with your thoughts, trying to create with your beliefs. But the lever was always in your body. The mechanism was always biological. The God nerve was always the one casting votes. And that nerve is trainable. That frequency is shiftable. That baseline is recalibratable. Not through years of work, through 90 days of practices so simple they seem too small to matter. But that's always been the trick. The God nerve doesn't respond to force. It doesn't respond to trying. It doesn't respond to mental effort. It responds to whispers, to breath, to vibration, to cold water, to sustained humming, to the quiet, consistent input that proves, experience by experience, practice by practice, day by day, that safety is real, that the warm room exists, that the daylight room is accessible, that you're allowed to relocate the thermostat. If this moved you, if something inside you exhaled for the first time in years, if you felt your body recognize truth it's been trying to tell you all along, stay with us. Subscribe, not because we need the numbers, but because you need the reminders. Because this work isn't one video. It's not one insight. It's not one practice. It's a path, a return, a coming home to the body you've been ignoring, the nerve you've been overriding, the frequency you've been too loud to hear. Leave a comment below with one word: regulated. Let me know this landed. Let me know you're ready to stop trying to think your way into abundance and start regulating your way there. Because the community forming around this work, the people who understand that sovereignty comes from biology, that freedom comes from nervous system mastery, that reality responds to your vagal tone more than your vision board, that community needs you. Your regulated nervous system will help regulate others. Your coherent field will help others find coherence. Your healing becomes their permission. Your transformation becomes their map. The daylight room is waiting. The God nerve is ready. The thermostat is in your hand. And your body, your brilliant, adaptive, plastic, responsive nervous system, is ready to update its vote. Not someday. Not when circumstances change. Not when you've healed everything else. Now. Today. This breath. This moment. Reality obeys this. The ancients knew it. The mystics practiced it. The scientists proved it. And now you know it too. Welcome home to your biology. Welcome home to regulation. Welcome home to the God nerve that's been trying to guide you all along. The silver cord. The central channel. The pathway between heaven and earth. It was never broken. Just constricted. Just waiting for you to speak its language. Just waiting for you to breathe, to hum, to practice, to regulate your way back to the truth. You're not at the mercy of reality. You're the one broadcasting it. And the broadcast is yours to change. Now go practice.